And he's like, I don't get it. We kind of realized talking about it, we're like, yeah, it's because we've just spent 5, 6, 7 years in an environment where every single person around you is ready to bite their own arm off to get one step ahead of you. Like, they are clawing at the walls. Like, they are all turning up early. Everyone's doing those extras. Everyone's looking at nutrition. Everyone's sleeping at night. And, you know, you slip up for 1 second, there's someone ready to take your seat off you.
What's up? Welcome to Last Stroke Counts. Thank you so much for watching our talk with Josh about the boat race. We didn't expect such a good response so quickly, so we've decided to shift this podcast a little bit early and kind of give you guys the background of who we are, and what's to come with the Last Stroke Counts. So let's get into it. My name is Pete. I started rowing in 2012 over in Poland for a club called Kaliskie Towarzystwo Wioślarskie Kalisz. KTW Kalisz.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that.
Where I've spent 2 years rowing and ended up winning a few medals, trial for the national team. From then on, I moved to the UK, started rowing at Leander, did that for about 2 years, tried rowing at Newcastle Uni for a bit, but I couldn't really continue that because I had to end up having a job at uni as a 4A student. And that's kind of my rowing journey in a really quick time lapse.
Definitely, I had some success on the way. You got a national medal and you did some international racing with England. So I think you've had an interesting rowing career. But yeah, my name's Tom Clark. I started rowing in 2003, so just coming up 20 years ago now at school, RGS Worcester. Had a bit of success at school, some schools' national medals, some Nat Champs medals. I did row for Wales when I was 16. Didn't quite make junior GB, but that kind of spurred me on then. After I left school, I decided to join Leander. And then I joined Leander in 2007, and then I retired from rowing in 2015. So from that point, full-time rowing. Again, had some success with Leander. I managed to win Henley. Did some work with the national team, 3 years in the under-23 team, and about 2 years in the senior team. And then eventually bowed out to injury, which is part of it at that level. And then in terms of row gear, Dad helped me take on row gear in 2009. It was originally created by a guy called Rick Colburn. We bought the business off him, and that was originally just to help me make a bit of extra money whilst I was rowing full time and allow me to have a job that worked around my rowing career. And then after I finished rowing, we sort of took it on, and now we're where we are.
So where are we?
Yeah, good question. Row gear has changed in many different forms since we've had it. When it came to us, it was really just a refurbishing rowing machine business. And we've sort of expanded out into predominantly servicing for a long time, but generally looking after equipment that rowing clubs use. So obviously anything with a Concept 2 badge on it, but a lot of other bits and pieces. And as our knowledge has grown, we've been able to help probably, what do we think, over 100 clubs now in a year, fixing all their equipment. And that's from the smallest club right up to the national team, which we've been doing for quite a few years now as well, which has been really good. And then in the last couple of years, since we've had a little bit more time to think about where we go in the future and what we'd like to do, but also where we think we could be helpful in the rowing world. It's been really nice being helpful, looking after people's equipment, but I think our experience and our careers, there's a lot more that we could offer. And obviously doing this podcast is one way that we can maybe help get some of that experience out to other people.
Can you tell us why the podcast is called The Last Stroke Counts?
Yeah. So I kind of remember what year is it? 2011, I think. Yeah, 2011. We did a ladies' plate 8 at Leander, and we lost in the final to Harvard by 1 foot. And there is a photo. There's that photo finish is now stuck up on the training board in the gym, the notice board where they put the training in the gym. There's a picture of that photo finish of our loss by 1 foot. and it says, do you know the full quote?
Yeah, it's just remember when training gets tough, the last stroke counts.
Yeah. So it seemed like as good a point as any to start with, and definitely what we want to talk about is finding those little extra incremental gains, those little bits and pieces around the outside of sport that we've learned over the years, and hopefully like transfer some of that knowledge to other people.
Certainly. I think it's also really interesting to talk to other athletes and other coaches and people involved in the sport and kind of find out what their thought process is behind making the boat go fast, or what it takes to be successful or to make it at the top level. And I'm personally just quite interested in what some people are thinking when going through hard moments or like some of those tough, tight international races. And hopefully we can bring this out on this podcast.
Yeah, definitely. Some of the biggest gains I've made as an athlete was when I had a coach who'd been in the same position previously, or athletes ahead of me had given me advice. Some things I sort of refer to it as a cheat code. It's like having a little cheat code for what you're doing. If someone's previous experience, they've had to learn something the hard way, or they've done something wrong and realized what that error was and changed it, they can give you that information. So I've always enjoyed being able to get that information out. It's always been really useful for me. And then when I moved into coaching, I was able to transfer that, be on the other side of that conversation. And I had athletes coming up below me, and I was able to give them a few little. Sometimes it's really nice when you see someone in a position that you're in and be able to help them. So yeah, and part of the podcast is going to be able to, well, like you said, personally, I enjoy talking about rowing a lot. I think anyone who does, you get to catch the bug. Been able to talk to a bunch of different people about a bunch of different things that are to do with rowing, but also transferable skills. And I think even if we talk to a lot of people who've got to the highest level, a lot of that's transferable to any level in sport. And also it's discussed a lot about transferring it to business. And I think a lot of what I've used in row gear success has been what I've learned from rowing. So all those factors together just sort of made it a logical step for us to do this and talk. And if other people find it interesting, great. If they don't, I'll happily talk to other rowers about rowing. And if no one else wants to listen, we're still going to have a good time.
Certainly. And the part of coaching and trying to transfer the knowledge is only the number of athletes that you've got in front of you are going to be able to get this, versus with a podcast, we're hoping to kind of spread it out. Maybe not worldwide, but at least certainly to like a larger scale where, it can help you. And it doesn't matter what stage you're at. Potentially you're just competing locally, or you're competing nationally, or you're trying to get into the international level, or maybe you're just trying to get through a few rounds of Henley. Hopefully you can derive some value from this and find what we waffle about interesting.
Yeah, I think I always find it really interesting to see that origin, that background, that how someone got to somewhere they were really good. I think there's an interview when Michael Jordan, and someone asked him how he became the best basketball player in the world. How come he's got the most shots, the most assists, the most rebounds and things like that? And his response was, you're just looking at the winning figures. I also missed 9,000 shots. And I think for me, that's really interesting to see what goes into that final result.
The full picture.
Yeah. And I think we've realized that we're in a unique position in the rowing world, in the fact that we both rowed at a high level for a certain point, and we've spent a lot of time in a club like Leander, which is more of a feeder club to the GB squad. So as well as developing their own athletes from a junior level like you did, a lot of people will come from other clubs. So they might finish their uni or their school career like I did and want to take their rowing to another level. So you spend a lot of time with a lot of people from a lot of different places, and they've gone out themselves into the rowing world. A lot of them are rowing coaches or involved in rowing, and because of row gear and because what we do and fixing equipment, we go around and see a lot of different people, a lot of different clubs, different setups, and I've managed to maintain friendships with people who I might otherwise, not have been able to see. I think that's a really great benefit, and that puts us in a more of a unique position where we probably know a lot of people in rowing. And obviously I finished in 2015, so that's nearly 10 years ago now. But a lot of those people who are rowing at that point are now coaching. So I see them through that way. So I think, I think we've realized we've got access to a lot of information, and then just realizing that could be really useful for everyone. So I think the point of this podcast is not necessarily to be the new voice of rowing or to go over competitions or scores or results. I think it's more really doing what we're interested in. Like I said, there's that background knowledge and how you get there, and learning some of these cheat codes and getting some of this advice. And with Rogim and some of the other projects we're doing now and the other things we're moving into, really is that sort of mantra, which is trying to make this accessible to everyone, trying to make the information accessible, but also equipment and coaching and things like that more accessible to everyone. And we love this sport, and we want other people to fall in love with it.
Absolutely. And I think it's really, really interesting to find out exactly what makes the winning formula for each individual. You know, you have so many different personalities in rowing, and even when you're down at Leander, there's 10 ways to make the boat go fast, and there's 10 ways that every guy has an idea of how to make the boat go fast, or girl. And we're just hoping to put a bit of more of a spotlight on this. So what's to come?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be the be all and end all. I think a lot of what we're going to talk about is personal experience, and that, you know, I'm no strength and conditioning coach or physio, but you know, I still think that having spent time in that environment, there's an understanding that we've gained from it and from the other people that we'll talk to. And moving forward, initially, another reason for starting the podcast was really to give the athletes that we're trying to support a bit more of a platform. So as Rogear, we made a decision to bring some athletes on board and try and support them in different ways through their career. So at the moment, we've got, you would have seen Josh Bozeman-Jones, and then we've got Morgan Byrne-Williams, who is a Cox at Leander and GB. She's a world champion, and Susie Deer, who again was trialing for GB, has spent some time in the GB team. She also rowed at university at Oxford Brookes. So yeah, to start with, it was really let's talk to those athletes. Like you said, we're interested in the background and get their experience, and allow them to have a bit more of a platform to help themselves in rowing. Obviously, the way that the world's going and social media is a lot more online, and rowing doesn't necessarily, people aren't doing it to get rich. And if we can help other athletes find other ways to make a bit of money, whether that's with us or maybe being able to promote themselves in a way that other companies might be more interested in getting on board with them. So that's for me the start of what we're going to do. But then we can branch out in so many different ways, and there's so many different areas that I'd like to talk to different athletes about. I'm going to name any names yet of who we've got coming. But definitely some high-level rowers, and hopefully some coaches as well who've coached at different levels. Anyone who's anything to do with rowing, really. We're not going to limit ourselves just to athletes. I definitely want to have a focus as well on business. I think that's important, and life after rowing, and transferable skills. I think that's really important. I think that's another thing where I know so many people who've left rowing have struggled with that transition, and I did it for a time, but since then a lot of the things I've learned has helped me in be successful with this business. So that's another area that we're going to get into. So definitely going to be a mixture of people on here. We're going to have some names hopefully that will pull people in. Definitely going to start with my mates because I think it's a bit easier to talk to people who you know. As we get further down the line, we'll hope to speak to some other people as well. And I know a lot of what we do is based around Leander, and we both rowed at Leander, but it's not. We're not going to limit ourselves to that. And again, the first members of our team that we've added are rowing at Leander, but that wasn't necessarily the reason why we took them on. We actually all coached together in some form at Keble College over the last few years. So we've sort of really been a bit of a team already in that environment. So it made sense for us really to start with those athletes when we were looking at people to support.
I really like what you said about how rowing is branched out. There's a lot of strength and conditioning, functional fitness, physio work, and we might not know a lot about everything, but we can certainly bring people on and leverage the deep understanding of what goes into being a successful athlete and voice that?
Yeah, I think it can take a few different angles, or it can take sometimes time to try and explain information in a way that other people understand. And some of the best coaches I've had would be people who are trying to get me to do a technical change, and maybe have had explained that in 3 or 4 different ways until I was like, oh, I get that now. Like, I understand what you're talking about. And that's something I've tried to do in coaching, is take that on, because that's something I found really useful. And I've been told that by other people that at times have managed to sort of get some of that more difficult talk into layman's terms. I think potentially it's because I'm not that bright and I need to break it down myself first. But then the way I've been able to give that information forward seems to have rung a bell. So from coaching, from talking to other athletes, it seems that the way I talk about things has been helpful. But again, that's just one angle. So the point of getting other people on would be to look at how they navigated those things in their career. And ultimately, there is no real, you can write a book about it and speak to 100 people and say that this is how it is, but that's not it. There's 100 different ways to do anything. So, and I think that's where we can really hopefully help by, bringing personal experience, which isn't always transferable, but I think by speaking to lots of different people, hopefully we can have a lot of information that can hit different people, and hopefully, some people will resonate more with some guests than others. But in general, it's like I said, I think it's a unique position we sit in, and as much as hopefully, this will benefit us and what we do, really we have been looking for a long time at just finding those different ways to benefit other rowers as well.
I think a great thing about this podcast is that we're going to unify all of our strong points and bring you the best possible value to get the most information to improve your rowing in the shortest amount of time possible. But also, if you're interested in the backstory of certain athletes, or what goes into making an Olympic champion, or what it's actually like to sit at an Olympic start line, well, we're not going to name any names, but we've got some really, really exciting things coming up.
Yeah, definitely. I think all of these things, like we said, is transferable. But I think, again, like we are both fans of rowing. We've really enjoyed that with sport. We've really enjoyed how it's different to other sports. Personally, for us, we enjoyed pushing ourselves to that limit, and I think that's a common theme with rowers.
I think one thing that makes us a great team is that we are certainly both not afraid of hard work, and we're super competitive, which means that we're trying to constantly one-up each other, but not in a competitive way, but more of a cooperative way. And hopefully you guys will be able to get the biggest benefit of what we're bringing out to the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, I realized that, when you train, when you're trying to do something, when you're trying to be the best in the world at something, you give your life to it. And for 6 or 7 years that I did, absolutely full time, nothing else mattered. To then step away from that and to have all this knowledge that is then just going to sit and do nothing seemed like quite a waste. And then doing a bit of coaching, I realized that was an opportunity to pass on this knowledge to other people, and that was really rewarding. And as much as I did coaching to get a bit of extra money, I actually really enjoyed more just the ability to use this information and not feel like it was wasted. And like we said, with coaching, that's limited to who you're talking to. So with this format, hopefully there's no limit to who can listen, and we'll definitely, like I said, because we're into this sport and we enjoy it, then we'll just keep doing what we like listening to, and hopefully that will be what other people enjoy as well.
Absolutely. And I've actually stepped away from rowing a few years after I finished my career, and then you brought me back to coach with you at Keble. And honestly, having that team of 60 athletes, including maybe 30 novices who we had to teach how to row from scratch, and watching them progress and get tons of PBs and improve and catch their rowing back, kind of almost reignited that love for rowing, which it's hard because sometimes when you finish, you don't know whether you love the sport or you hate it. You don't really know what to think about it because you just spent so many sessions ending yourself. Then when you're finally finished, it's almost a relief, but it's an empty feeling because you need to fill that void with something else. And obviously, as a really competitive individual, if you are a high level rower or any rower, then you will kind of have that fire inside you. So hopefully we can also show you how you can put that into business and make yourself successful outside of rowing too, because I don't really ever see a world where all the skills you learn from rowing, like you said, all the transferable skills, discipline, camaraderie, hard work, teamwork, being on time, managing your time, recovery, looking after your nutrition, that can all really improve.
Setting a standard really and maintaining it. And I remember not long after I finished rowing, I was speaking to a friend of mine, Ed Cordwell, a really good mate. I like him. Shout out. He'd started working for Virgin Racing Team in London, and he had been put in charge of hiring. And he'd had a couple of interviews, and he was saying to me, he's like, I've had this interview booked, and half an hour after it was supposed to start, I get a text message from a guy who says, "Oh, sorry, I'm late. I'm in traffic." And he's like, I don't get it. And I said, we kind of realized talking about it, we're like, yeah, it's because we've just spent 5, 6, 7 years in an environment where every single person around you is ready to bite their own arm off to get one step ahead of you. Like, they are clawing at the walls. Like, they are all turning up early. Everyone's doing those extras. Everyone's looking at nutrition. Everyone's sleeping at night. And, you slip up for 1 second, there's someone ready to take your seat off you. You then move into a general work world where there are people like turning up, oh, I'm sorry, there's traffic. Like, yes, London. No shit. If you can't turn up 10 minutes early to your job interview, like, you failed. Like,
so you want the job?
Yeah. Like tick number one. It's like, if they couldn't even be 10 minutes early to interview, like, I don't want to talk to you. So it's weird, like, being in that world, which is so very different from this kind of elite sport world. So again, talking about transferable stuff, it's funny when you go out there, but there's so much to be learned from having all these competitive people, these ultra competitive people, all in one place. I remember I was on can't remember if it was a pre-Worlds camp or I think it was just an under-23 development week, and it was a pretty tough camp. We were all pretty tired, and towards the end of it, we had like a cross-training session, and the coach Pete Shepherd said, we'll all just go and play a game of football. And I was like, oh, this will be a session off, right? Like, we're not going to do anything here. And then he said, oh, by the way, I'm busy, I can't come down, so you guys are just going to have to go off and organise yourself. So we all drove to the field, and everyone got out, and we were tired, and everyone was like, yeah, no, we're not doing anything here. Inevitably, like, within 5 minutes of the game starting, all of a sudden, like, it's on. There's like flying tackles going in everywhere. It's just like, one team goes 2 ahead, and
all it takes is to put a bunch of rowers in a room together, and shit just starts to go crazy.
Yeah, so that's like the interesting mentality that isn't necessarily all over the place, and then that's not something that you just have inside you. It does develop slowly over time, but it's really funny, even when you're exhausted, even when you think, oh, I'm going to sit this one out, like, that competitive mentality just comes through.
Certainly. And also, it's good to be competitive against each other because it makes you stronger as a team. And what you said in rowing, you have a little mantra called "On time is 5 minutes late." And certainly, like with that interview story, when you were rowing, you had to also take into account potentially 8 other people plus the coach who were in your crew. So if you were late, then the entire crew would suffer the consequences of that. So you kind of are more responsible for like what you're doing, and you can see how your actions can affect team's performance.
Yeah, we talked how being in that environment is what pushes you to be your best. And I think we said before, no one's ever set a world record without a crew really close behind you. You need those people close behind you to keep pushing you on, and just having those people to fight against, and you all just turning the ratchet and getting better and better and better and better. So that, again, like, that's something that you can learn from being in that environment. And even if you're not able to be in that environment, maybe from the people we talk to who have been in that environment, there's some of those skill sets that you can learn, without having to be there.
Absolutely. And for example, not always will you have the chance to compete against people who are also really close and can push you on with your levels. So maybe you can get that extra little bit of fire or motivation from some of the stories and interesting chats that we're going to bring.
Yeah, definitely. Try and bring some of the fun, and it's not all horrific grind. There's fun bits in it as well, and you wouldn't do this if you didn't love it, and you couldn't do it if you didn't love it.
That's true.
I think ultimately, if you want to be really good at something, you have to choose something you love to start with, and then if you love doing it, you can do it to a higher and higher level. And no one loves what they're doing every day. There are always difficult days, but in the long run, one of the things I'm most happy about my rowing career, looking back, is that I gave it everything. I really absolutely put everything in for that time that I was there. And I get asked a lot, having since retired, are you going to row again? Do you want to row again? I was like, I did that. I did 100%. I gave everything else up, and I did it. And I feel quite confident or happier to walk away from that, knowing that there's nothing more I could have done. And I blew my back to pieces a number of times in the pursuit of the highest level that I could get to. So, that's again, I won't be the only person that's done that, and hopefully we can talk to a bunch of different people who have got similar experiences, and it's experiences of winning, but also experiences of losing. And I think you learn more from losing than winning, and I think you can learn more from talking about the process and the story that comes into it than sometimes. It's great to talk about how the final went and how you won it. But that's the easy bit, really. Winning is the
easy bit. Yeah. I'm interested in those long winter sessions and, the fights that you had within the team, the selection, the trials, the competitiveness, the cutthroat element of it, your psychology, what you've had to overcome. Maybe somebody has struggled with something in particular, or they've been in a rut for a few years where they weren't able to achieve as much as they wanted to, but they continued. They never stopped. They kept going, and then eventually they rose up and they got their medals at the highest level. And those stories I find personally are so fascinating.
Yeah,
amazing. So next week, what are we doing? We're up north. We're doing some servicing over in Newcastle and Edinburgh. So we're going to be up there, and we're planning to do a little Q&A episode when we're staying over in Edinburgh. So if you have any questions that you'd like us to answer, or if there are any particular topics that you'd like us to cover, maybe there's something that potentially you're struggling with at the minute, or something that interests you, or you don't quite understand something, we're here to help. So fire away, and we'll release it next week.
Yeah, I think a part of the problem with starting this podcast is we've got too much to talk about. And, we could talk about anything for hours. So I think it's going to be interesting to see maybe what other people want us to talk about. And just to pick an area and really delve into it. Even just now, we've briefly gone over our backgrounds and what we did. But in later episodes, I think we can delve into that a little bit further and into the direction of business or other things. But for sure, if you guys have got questions, then I think that'd be really interesting to try and go over them. And if you've got ideas for future podcasts or different things, and that could sort of influence maybe who we get on, and it could be a case of trying to get some more coaches on, or some more strength and conditioning coaches and things like that, some specialist stuff. So now, really interested. Like we said, the point of this really is to share information that people want to hear, and as long as I want to hear it, I'm happy talking about it. And I think anything to do with rowing, I'm happy talking about. So happy, excited to throw it out at this point already. Only having done a couple of these, if we can throw that out and get some questions, I think it'll be really exciting to talk about those things.
Fantastic. So if you want to find us or reach us with the questions, you can either drop them, if you're watching on YouTube, you can drop them in the comments, or you could just DM us on Instagram, and all of our handles are attached somewhere throughout this video. So
slide into the DM.
Slide into the DMs.
With that technical rowing question. It's a different form of using Instagram.
Certainly looking forward to that. Cool. I think that just about wraps it up today.
Yeah, we'll keep it short today. Yeah.
Absolutely. That 2 hours was good, but like you said, we could go on for 5, 6, 7 hours. It's just never ending.
Yeah.
Rowing. Rowers love to talk about rowing.
Yeah. At some point, rowing is life. When you're in it, it is, it's it consumes your life. It becomes everything, and everything revolves around it. And that's really exciting to pursue something at that level. I've never enjoyed doing anything half-assed. I think you get so much more value out of really giving everything. And I think whatever you do, sport, business, anything, when you stop doing that, you get to walk away happy, knowing that you did it all.
Absolutely. And if you want to get to the top, like you said, you have to sacrifice and commit so much. So we're going to shed a bit of light on how that works. But for now, easy there.
Cue the music.